Republicans want to pursue their domestic agenda, they're going to have to frighten people. If the Republicans want to pursue their domestic agenda, they're going to have to frighten people.
If the Republicans want to pursue their domestic agenda, they're going to have to frighten people.
The press understands that it's much better that citizens not know about this, either not reported here or barely reported.
They're going to have to frighten people. If
the Republicans understood very well that they can't possibly win the elections if the issues are those that concern people, socioeconomic issues, basically. And the reason is they're cutting everybody's throat, and they'll get smashed if that's the issue. The press understands that it's much better that citizens not know about this, either not reported here or barely reported. If the Republicans want to pursue their domestic agenda, they're going to have to frighten people. The Republicans understood very well that they can't possibly win the elections if the issues are those that concern people, socioeconomic issues, basically. And the reason is they're cutting everybody's throat, and they'll get smashed if that's the issue. They were able to stay in office by frightening people, and that's what they did. It was necessary to frighten people into believing that there's a threat to their security. They were able to stay in office by frightening people, and that's what they did. It was necessary to frighten people into believing that there's a threat to their security. In that case, they'll rally around the strong leader, the brave cowboy, and they'll suppress their concerns over things like, where's my job, or what's happening to my pension, or how am I going to take care of my elderly mother, and so on and so forth. If they're voting on those issues, the administration doesn't have a chance. People in the United States are genuinely frightened.
Either you're with us, or you're with the terrorists.
People in the United States are genuinely frightened. If the Republicans want to pursue their domestic agenda, they're going to have to frighten people. And they did. Starting in September, there was a drumbeat of propaganda about several things. First, that Saddam Hussein is an imminent threat to our survival. Another was the constant insinuation that he was behind the September 11th attacks and that they were planning new ones. This was a spectacularly successful government media propaganda campaign. You can see it by looking at the polls. By end of September and since, around 60% of the population believes that Saddam Hussein is an imminent threat to U.S. security and survival. By now, over a majority think that Iraq was behind September 11th and is planning new things, that Iraqis were on the plains. If you go back before that, it was like 3%, and the whole idea is totally outlandish. These attitudes are very highly correlated with support for war, and it's understandable. I mean, if I believed those things, I'd be in favor of the war too. If you think that Saddam Hussein is an imminent threat to your existence, that he carried out the September 11th attacks, he's powerful enough to carry out new ones, yeah, it's an argument for war. And people in the United States are genuinely frightened. This is unique to the United States. No one else believes any of this.
3/4 of Americans had absolutely no idea whatsoever.
People do not have information given to them by the media.
Americans had absolutely no idea whatsoever.
The world is more concerned about the unbridled use of U.S. power than it is about the threat posed by Saddam Hussein, which is an understatement, because in fact the world was not concerned about the threat posed by Saddam Hussein because it didn't see any threat. Even his neighbors despise him but are not afraid of him. The press understands that it's much better that citizens not know about this.
The Republicans.
One of the ways they kept the country terrified through the 1980s was to conjure up an air base in Grenada, which the Russians were going to use to bomb us. Fortunately, our brave cowboy leader saved us in time. Sent 6,000 special forces who managed to overcome the resistance of a couple of dozen Cuban paramilitary workers with pistols, and actually got 8,000 Medals of Honor for it. And we were standing tall after that, if you remember, so we were saved. But for a while it looked like the Russians were going to bomb us from Grenada, assuming they could find it on a map somewhere. Well, suppose they found it, and they had bombers there, and the bombers in Grenada were doing just what we were told they were going to do, and everyone was supposed to be shivering. They were coming across the Caribbean to bomb Florida. Okay, if at that point the U.S. sent out planes to shoot down the bombers before they destroyed us, that would be legitimate under Article 51 of the UN Charter. That's preemptive war. Now, this is something totally different. This is a doctrine that says we will attack anyone who we regard as a potential challenge. Nothing preemptive about that. Sometimes it's called preventive war, but that's not right either. It's not preventing anything. The only thing it's preventing is any potential challenge that the U.S. government invents, claims to be a challenge. That's just an open license to go to war with anybody. destroy anybody, which we can do because we have overwhelming power. That's the way it's understood, and that doesn't make people comfortable. It caused a wave of hatred and fear. This is the most feared and hated political leadership maybe in history. It's hard to think of a counterpart. This is the most feared and hated political leadership maybe in history. Feared and hated political leadership maybe in history.